every school should have plans for that situation to be able to pivot and ensure that kids can continue learning at a distance if they have to for a short period of time.
You're the Secretary of Education. You're asking students to go back. So why do you not have guidance on what a school should do just weeks before you want those schools to reopen on what happens if it faces an outbreak?
You know, there's really good examples that have been utilized in the private sector and elsewhere, also with frontline workers and hospitals.
But I'm not hearing a plan from the Department of Education. Do you have a plan for what students and what schools should do?
So schools should do what's right on the ground at that time for their students and for their situation.
You are arguing over and over that they should handle this on a local level, but at the same time, as the Secretary of Education, you are trying to push them to do a one-size-fits-all approach, which is go back and reopen schools. You can't have it both ways.
I am urging all schools to open and to be providing their students a full-time education.
Who keeps putting her on TV? How is she this bad at this? She keeps repeating the same thing over and over again with this blank, wide-eyed stare, even as Dana Bash presses her on very simple questions about Department of Education guidelines for reopening schools. It's only a few weeks away for many states in the country. You might want to get it together. But of course, I'm sure her personal, private investment in for-profit schools and charter schools, financial investments in many cases, I'm sure that has nothing to do with her push to ensure that kids are back in school. And it's also pressure from the Trump administration to pretend everything's normal, everything's normal. Oh yeah, there's a low risk that kids could die from COVID-19. But there are many stories of rare brain blood diseases that are happening, and kids were dying in New York when they contracted the virus because we don't know anything. We don't know enough. But it doesn't matter. Charter schools are going to lose money, so let's go, let's go. That's what happens when you have for-profit education. I mean, that's one of the many pitfalls of that kind of approach. So those CDC guidelines that Dana Bash referenced there, that she's trying to tweak, that the Trump administration is trying to tweak. Oh wow, that's a tongue twister. They're not tweakable. They're not tweakable, even though Betsy DeVos and Trump are trying. The U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention will not revise its guidelines for reopening schools, despite calls from President Donald Trump and the White House to do so, agency director Dr. Robert Redfield said Thursday. Internal documents from the CDC warned that fully reopening K-12 schools and universities would be the highest risk for the spread of coronavirus, the New York Times reported last week. Science doesn't bend to your political whims. What's politically convenient for you at the time? Trump would rather coronavirus just magically disappear as he said it was going to do, so he has a better shot at re-election. So Betsy DeVos can make a few more millions off her investments in charter for-profit schools and universities. But that's not what happens when you have a pandemic. It's very inconvenient for them, but they can't control the narrative when it's strict science, it's infection rates, it's people dying. But it's sociopathic that they don't even care about people dying. Like, they truly don't when it gets in the way of the narrative. And in Betsy DeVos's case, these are children. Children! Children! And she wants just to let the schools decide. They're not frontline workers. They're not scientists. You need to give them guidelines because children's health and safety and lives are on the line. This is what we're playing with. And we have an corrupt idiot like this who's heading the agency that's supposed to be protecting everyone's children.